Good morning. We are going to have our call to order now. This is the Physical Therapy Board meeting on December 7th. Our call to order is at 9 a.m. We are going to ask everyone to please mute your phones, tablets, or whatever device you have, and we will go right into our roll call.
Tanya McMillian.
Present.
Dale Armstrong. Dale Armstrong is absent. Karen Brandon.
Present.
Katarina Ellaby.
Present.
Samuel Q.
Present.
Alicia Ben-Amen.
Here.
All members are present with the exception of Dale Armstrong, and the board has a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now move into the reading of the board's mission statement.
The mission of the PT Board of California is to advance and protect the interests of the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is our special order of business. It's the petition for early termination of probation, and I will turn it over to ALJ, to Judge Larson.
All right, good morning. All right, so we are here on December 7th, 2023, in the matter of the petition for the termination of probation by Jordan, is it Istrin? Istrin. This matter is being heard before the Board of Physical Therapy of California, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. It's case number 720-219, 002-407, OAH case number 2023-100230. The board members have already identified themselves for the record, and a quorum is present. My name is Marcy Larson. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings assigned to preside over this matter, this morning. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Ryan Yates, Deputy Attorney General, representing the people of California.
And counsel for petitioner?
Good morning, Your Honor. Eli Perlman on behalf of petitioner, Jordan Istrin.
And Mr. Istrom is seated next to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, I'm going to briefly explain how the hearing is going to proceed this morning. Mr. Istrom has filed a petition for early termination of probation, and so this matter concerns his rehabilitation efforts since his license was disciplined and he was placed on probation. The Deputy Attorney General will proceed first by submitting the petition documents into evidence. Everybody should have a copy of those exhibits. And so he will identify those exhibits and then give a brief orientation to the board with regards to the history of discipline in this matter. After that, petitioner will have an opportunity to present his case. You may give any opening remarks. And then if petitioner would like to testify on his own behalf, I will swear him in, and counsel can question him. He's also subject to questioning by the Deputy Attorney General and the board members. After all the evidence has been presented, both counsel will have an opportunity to give closing remarks to the board, and then the matter will be submitted. The board will then go into closed session to deliberate. You will not receive a decision today. You will receive a written decision sometime in the future. All right, any questions for me before we get started?
Nothing here, Your Honor.
All right then, Mr. Yates, if you would please begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Deputy Attorney General Ryan Yates. I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General of the State of California. I'm here to assist Your Honor and the board in this fact-finding hearing. My role is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest and to ensure that Your Honor and the board have adequate information and make an informed decision. I now ask that exhibits A through G are identified in the exhibit index, be marked and entered into evidence.
All right, if you would just give us the title for each.
Exhibit A, we have a certificate of licensure which starts at AG01. I move to enter that into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit B, a copy of the request for hearing, AG02. I move that into evidence.
Exhibit B is the request for hearing. Any objection?
No.
Exhibit B is admitted.
Exhibit 3, the hearing notice, AG03 to AG05. I move that into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit C is admitted.
Exhibit D, the petition for termination, AGO 6 to AGO 46. Move that into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Exhibit D is admitted.
Exhibit E, the petition for reduction of penalty report, that's AGO 47 to AGO 59. We'd like to move that into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit E is admitted.
Exhibit F, petitioner's prior disciplinary action and citation, that's AGO 60 to AGO 88. We'd like to move that into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit F is admitted.
And Exhibit G, petitioner's probation file, AGO 89 to AGO 131. And we'd like to move that into evidence, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit G is admitted.
Moving on to the background.
Please.
All right. So Jordan Istron, PT, has petitioned for termination of probation. That was on July 14th, 2023. Petitioner was placed on probation for 35 months, effective May 23rd, 2022. Summarizing the background, petitioner's license history is as follows. Petitioner was first registered by the board on December 1st, 2016, receiving his physical therapist license. During the time of the alleged misconduct as contained in the accusation, petitioner was working as a physical therapist for Brighton Physical Therapy in Los Angeles, California. On May 17th, 2021, the board filed accusation number 720-2019-002407 against petitioner. This alleged violations of the Business and Professions Code, Section 2660, gross negligence and failure to maintain adequate documentation. The factual basis of the accusation is as follows. On July 29th, 2019, patient A was evaluated by petitioner following a slip and fall at work. She had been diagnosed with low back strain, right hip strain, neck strain, and possible sciatica. Petitioner documented a plan that included therapeutic exercise, neuromuscular rehabilitation, manual therapy, splinting taping, and patient education. This included a manual therapy to the right gluteal region, LIS paraspinals, CS paraspinals, upper traps, and joint mobilization. On August 2nd, 2019, patient A had her second visit with petitioner. Her subjective complaints were updated to indicate continued pain down the right leg. She was provided the same manual therapy as she received at the first visit. The documented assessment and goals were identical to those set forth in the first visit. On August 7th, 2019, patient A saw petitioner for a third visit. Her subjective complaints were updated to indicate, quote, a lot of soreness after treatment, end quote, and quote, feeling steady improvement, end quote. Treatment was documented to consist of exercise, manual therapy, and electrical stimulation. The documented assessment and goals were identical to those set forth during the prior two visits. On August 12th, 2019, patient A saw petitioner for a fourth and final visit. Her subjective complaints were updated to reflect that she had numbness and tingling down the right leg and pain in the toes. Treatment was documented to consist of therapeutic exercise, manual therapy, and electrical stimulation. The documented assessment and goals were identical to those set forth during the prior visits. There is no information documented in no information documented in the record indicating that the patient was advised of what would happen during any of the treatments, what she could expect, or that the patient was given an opportunity to ask questions related to treatment. So in short, petitioner engaged in gross negligence by failing to provide informed consent and failed to document the provision of informed consent to patient A. Accusation case number 720-2019-002407 resulted in an executed stipulated settlement which became effective on May 23rd, 2022. Petitioner stipulated and agreed that the charges, if proven at hearing, constitute cause for discipline. Furthermore, petitioner stipulated and agreed that the complaint could establish a factual basis for the charges, and petitioner gave up his right to contest that causes of discipline exist based on those charges. As part of the agreed upon disciplinary order, petitioner was placed on probation for 35 months with the following terms and conditions. Cost recovery of $24,000 for $24,410.85, which would be reduced by 50% if petitioner paid 50% of the cost within 180 days, or reduced by 25% if petitioner paid 75% of the cost at least 180 days prior to the completion of probation. Additionally, petitioner agreed to being ordered in the disciplinary order to obey all laws, compliance with orders of the court if applicable, compliance with criminal probation and payment of restitution if applicable, quarterly reports, probation monitoring, program compliance, interview with the board or its designee, notification of probation status to employers, notification of name, address, or email address change, restriction of practice, temporary service agencies, restriction of practice, clinical instructor of physical therapy student interns or foreign educated physical therapist license applicants prohibited, prohibited use of aliases, intermittent work prohibition, tolling of probation, violation of probation, request to surrender license due to retirement, health, or other reasons, i.e. Petitioner may do so, completion of probation, California law examination, written examination on the laws and regulations governing the practice or performance of physical therapy. Probation monitoring costs, restriction of practice, presence of physical therapists. This is essentially is a term requiring a PT supervisor. Restriction of practice monitoring, which essentially requires a practice monitor. Restriction of practice, prohibition of home care. Restriction of practice, no supervision of physical therapist license applicants or physical therapist assistant license applicants. Restriction of practice, no supervision of physical therapist assistants. Restriction of practice, no supervision of physical therapy aides. And finally, education courses in the fields of documentation and ethics. This stipulation was signed by petitioner on January 12th, 2022. As previously stated, the effective date of the board's decision and order was May 23rd, 2022. On July 14th, 2023, the board received a petition for reduction of penalty from petitioner. Submitted along with the petition were attachments referred to earlier and entered into evidence. On October 2nd, 2023, probation agent Monty Martin submitted a petition for reduction of penalty report. This report contained a synopsis of the investigation, facts, allegations, and violations contained within the original accusation and summaries. The report additionally contained a compliance with stipulated settlement section. The report stated the petitioner was largely compliant with the terms of his settlement. Regarding costs, petitioner had then paid $12,205.43 by July 6, 2022. This reduced the amount owed to the board to $12,205.43. That was then. As of now, there is no evidence of any failed payment to the board. Report additionally states that petitioner has been compliant with all aspects of probation. Prior to the start of probation, petitioner was issued a citation on April 7th, 2021 for failing to accurately record keep. The citation was paid in full on May 9th, 2021, and the matter was closed on May 10th, 2021. The report additionally contains summaries of interviews with petitioner's current supervisor and his former supervisor, and also a summary of the interview with petitioner. And so I believe that accurately summarizes the matter as of today's date. As this is a petition for penalty relief, it is petitioner's burden to demonstrate that he is rehabilitated by clear and convincing evidence. Therefore, I have nothing further at this time, but I do reserve the right to cross-examine petitioner or call him as a witness if he chooses not to testify before making any recommendation to the board. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Perlman, do you wish to give any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yates, and thank you to this board for hearing us today. We flew in from Los Angeles to meet with all of you, and we're excited to present our case on behalf of Jordan Istrom. As Mr. Yates mentioned, there is a list of items that Mr. Istron was required to do as part of his probation. He's been compliant with all of those items on that list. And what we intend to present today is to show you how he has changed over the course of this probation period. How, when he originally started, or when he was originally practicing therapy, there were some deficiencies, but how he has moved and cleared up those deficiencies. The classes he has taken, the processes he has implemented, the protocols he has implemented, and although no one wants to be on probation, we will present to this board and show everyone how he's become a better therapist, and as a result, this probation should be terminated in its entirety. So we look forward to presenting some evidence to show how he has become a better therapist, and show you how he was before and how he is today.
All right, do you wish to call your petitioner?
I do.
All right. Mr. Istrom, the first thing I need to do is swear you in, so if you would please rise.
Of course.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. Please state and spell your name.
My name is Jordan Istrin, Jordan Istrin, PT, DPT, I don't know if that's necessary.
Right, so counsel is going to question you. Just make sure you wait until he's finished asking the question before you answer it. It makes it easier for us to follow and when you're not talking over each other. Mr. Yates can object to any questions that are asked, and if he does object, please don't answer the question unless I instruct you to do so. As I mentioned, after your counsel is done questioning you, I will ask Mr. Yates if he has any questions for you. And I will then ask our board members if they have any questions as well. All right, Mr. Perlman, you're.
Is there a bailiff here? We want to submit some evidence, someone that I should give the documents to?
No, if you brought documents with you, there's not a bailiff. You'll hand those to me.
Okay.
Did you bring copies for all the board
Yes, we
members? All right, did you provide copies to Mr. Yates?
Yes,
Okay, how many documents do you have?
we have 2 exhibits.
Well, then you can hand them to me.
Okay, we'll get there.
Okay.
Okay. Let's warm up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
How about state your name again for the record?
My name is Jordan Istrin, Doctor of Physical Therapy.
How long have you been a physical therapist?
Since December 2016, so coming on 7 years.
Are you currently employed as a physical therapist?
I am. I work at EM Therapeutics in
I'm-
Los Angeles.
It'll be more helpful if you're facing us.
Oh.
I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, and you also have to talk into the microphone. So tell me again where you're employed?
EM Therapeutics.
Okay.
How long have you been employed there?
Since November of 2019.
Are you currently subject to any limitations on your license?
Yes, I am. I am under probation and have a essentially limited license.
Well, let's talk just briefly about the accusation that was made against you. If you could, I'll direct everyone's attention, or we're going to read directly from AG Exhibit, page 43, but he'll read it out loud. Can you just explain to this panel the basis for the first cause of action against you?
Gross negligence, failure to provide and document informed consent.
I'd like to submit to this board Exhibit 1. We'll title this Informed Consent Document.
Right, Exhibit 1 is marked for identification. Mr. Yates, do you have any objection to Exhibit 1?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Stern, what is this document?
So the first page of it is the patient information page, and then the second page is the patient informed consent. saying that the patient gives the therapist at Brighton Therapy to perform physical therapy onto them.
Who is the patient in this, who provided this informed consent?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that for HIPAA
Okay,
purposes.
it's called patient A.
Patient A.
Is this the same patient that is in the accusation?
Yes.
Okay, so you did in fact, so you did obtain the patient's informed consent?
Yes.
Okay. Now that this was how you obtained the patient's informed consent in the past, talk to us now, or tell the panel about how you use this document when you are currently meeting with patients while you're on probation.
So now, I hand this document to patients and explain, this is your informed consent. Once you sign this, then we can begin our treatment. And then I take them into the room or the open gym, wherever we might be doing our initial evaluation, and do my assessment on them. And then from there, after I determine what kind of therapy they need, I document what I've said to them of my plan of care, be it manual therapy, be it exercise, functional therapy, neuromuscular reeducation, TENS, whatever modality we're gonna be doing. I then explain that to a patient, ask if they have any further questions, and then I document what I've said to them and do I have their consent. And I write that down into my notes, so that way everyone knows what's happening and they have an understanding and the time to ask questions.
Okay, so it sounds like you have changed the way in which you communicate with the patients compared to July 2019 to today. Can we just talk more specifically and break it down into little chunks? What are some of those things that you do now that you didn't do then?
So now I thoroughly explain what informed consent means to each patient and request that they understand, and if they have any questions about what physical therapy, what their expectations are of what will be happening in treatment sessions. And I go over that each time, every time we have a session, to make sure that I have their consent for us to move forward with our treatment. As well, I have now put in place templates and checklists as I do my documentation to make sure that everything is covered in my documentation so that it is thorough and complete per the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
How did you get these templates?
I pretty much printed it out from the board's website and kind of crafted it into my own thing to like fill in the blank situation.
Do you now communicate more regularly with your supervising physical therapist?
I do. We have weekly / every other week meetings to discuss my documentation, my patient cases, and what's happening in the office.
Okay.
Previously, I did not really do that. I worked very autonomously at that office, his office currently.
Okay. I'd like to submit another.
So with regards to Exhibit 1, there's confidential information on here. This is a public hearing. This would become a public document.
We can
And so
black it
in
out.
order to protect the privacy of the patient, I will issue a protective order when the decision is issued, which essentially provides that this document stays protected unless there's a legal basis to have it released. Any
Thank you.
objection, Mr. Yates?
No objection here, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Perlman?
None, thank you.
All right, Exhibit 1 will be included in the protective order.
Okay. Exhibit 2 is a longer list, but what,
Thank you.
well, Exhibit 2, this is transcripts of courses taken by Mr. Istrin.
All right, hold on just a minute, because we have one that's not. Hold on just a second, I have to get these two. We have some that are stapled and some that
Oh,
are
I'm
not.
sorry.
I wanted to explain that part. So there are some that are, so they're all together, but each staple piece is the separator. So it's a packet of one. Do you want me-
You're gonna have to help me here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I need to know what's the actual exhibit.
Wait, what is
Okay, so staple piece, that's one. That's two. Yeah. I ran out of staples.
What happens?
We only need 6 exhibits.
You have a stapled one, you can take mine if you want.
But it's not complete.
Oh, gotcha.
There were more that I,
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Take this one.
Thank you.
I didn't realize that that was what was going on.
that was my fault.
This is Exhibit B. This is a list of courses that Mr. Istron has taken since probation.
It's Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2,
All right, so just, I'm going to give Mr. Yates a moment. Have you taken a look at Exhibit 2?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to Exhibit 2?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
thank you. Can you tell us about some of the courses that you have taken?
Yes, I can. A lot of them were, well, the initial ones were ones that were mandated that I needed to take, but then I decided to go further and educate myself even more on the roles and the ethics of physical therapy and how to properly document everything. And so that is what you're kind of seeing right now, is this compendium of courses that I've taken to further educate myself to make sure that I do not have deficiencies anymore. And so this is the breadth of the work that I've done.
Are there any courses that you want to point out to the panel to show?
So I think the defensive documentation, that was one of the ones that was mandated. I felt that that was very interesting and really kind of showed me how to really write proper documentation, be concise, be succinct, and also the pitfalls of EMR and how to make it work for you and your patients. Like, that was also a very good course, and it really just says how everything must be written down and how, you know, keeping it in order is so important to the patient and to your practice. And so I've really taken that to heart and really try to make sure that everything is how it should be for myself, for my patients, for my office, you know, community, whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like you made a real change in the way that you practice physical therapy. Let's talk a little bit, just briefly, about how this has affected you financially. This probation has affected you financially.
Financially, this has been a very hard thing to be under this probation, because, you know, even though I love my boss, he's a great guy, I have no growth within the practice that I'm working at, and he really has me under his thumb, as they say, because I can't go anywhere. I can't be hired by anyone else with a limited license. And I have 2 small children that I want to be able to provide for, and this probation is making it difficult for me to move on with my career and excel.
Would you say that his practice is busy?
No, it's not very busy. That's why I'm only working there 3 days a week, because he doesn't have more patients for me to be seeing. There's actually another location that he has in a different part of town, but he just doesn't have enough patients for me to be working there and his Los Angeles office.
Okay. I have nothing further at this moment.
Mr. Yates, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Good morning. So I have a few questions that I just want to ask you about the petition that you submitted.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, once again, any names confidential, so if we're talking about the patient referred to in the accusation, patient A. I think we'll all know what you're talking about when you say patient A. And any other, personal names, just try not to use those. So is this your first attempt at petitioning for termination of probation?
Yes, it is.
And as we sit here today, are you disputing any of the charges that were originally filed against you in the accusation?
No, your counsel can't answer the question for you. You have to answer the question.
We're not necessarily disputing these charges because that's not what the purpose of this hearing is. I'm here to demonstrate my rehabilitation.
And do you accept responsibility for the actions that led to the probation?
I do accept responsibility, and that's why I want to be able to move forward with my career and life and be able to put this behind me as I've learned from my mistakes in the past, and I've changed greatly how I practice physical therapy as a therapist.
So you mentioned moving forward and being held back by your current situation. What exactly is holding you back from moving forward due to probation?
So I cannot leave my current employer as he is my supervisor as well. And no one is going to hire someone that has a limited license, as that they are a liability and cannot fully practice to the extent and scope of the law. And with that, if you're not able to practice fully, why would someone want to be able to hire you? And if I want to work in a hospital, which is where a lot of good physical therapy jobs are at this point for hospital systems, not necessarily inpatient, but it just doesn't look, the optics are not good being under a restricted license.
So if you weren't able to completely terminate your probation from the board, would you be willing to accept a reduction of probationary terms?
I would like a ending of the probationary terms.
Well, we'd have to see those terms, obviously.
So counsel, you're not being asked the question. He's asking the client, and he can answer the question. And if you want to object, you can, but at this point, he's just being asked to respond.
So, I mean, what I'm saying is if the board, for whatever reason, decides, well, maybe we're not ready to terminate probation fully, would you be willing to accept a reduction in terms?
It depends on what those terms are, but I would very much prefer to have a termination of my probation, as I've served 19 months out of the 35 months of it currently,
Okay.
so over a year and a half.
And so you mentioned you're currently working at a practice in Los Angeles, and this is a different practice from where you were working during the time of the alleged misconduct, is that right?
That is correct.
Can you tell us when you left that first practice?
I left that first practice in November of 2019 and went across the hall to where I currently work.
Okay, can you elaborate on the circumstances of why you left that practice and then joined the second practice?
I was offered more money as well as an opportunity to grow within the practice, but that is no longer the case now that I'm on probation.
Okay, it wasn't a termination or anything like that?
No, it was not. We actually ended on very good terms. I waited a month and found a replacement for myself at the other office before I left.
Okay, and,
Trained my replacement, so.
no problem. What's the size of the practice that you're currently working at?
It's me and my boss, and then 2 office staff, a billing lady and a front desk lady.
And how many patients a week do you think that you see?
Well, I see, depending on the day, can I pull out my phone and just do some math?
Just give us an estimate.
Okay,
please.
so like
Thank you.
between 12 and 16 a day, give or take,
Okay.
every 30 minutes, more or less. People show up, people don't show up. So 36 to 40 patients a week is what I'm seeing.
And that's on the low end?
That's pretty low because they don't have more people to fill the other days.
Okay. And what kind of specialty, do you have any specialties as a physical therapist?
I'm really more outpatient orthopedic generalist. I did a stint at a hand clinic and got a lot of experience there with hands, but I never went through with the full certification process to be a certified hand therapist. But really, anything to do with the hands, upper extremity, but also do a lot of back issues, knee issues, really whatever comes to the door, I treat.
Okay. Now, going back to why we're here, it's my understanding this stems from issues regarding informed consent. You talked a little about that, but could you just kind of shortly tell us how your practice has changed since receiving the accusation?
Yes, I would say that it has changed greatly with how I communicate effectively with my patients, make sure that they understand every bit that is going to be happening within a session, and then I document what I've said to them in terms of their treatment plan and what will be happening and what does happen in my documentation.
Do you use an informed consent form or anything like
There is
that?
an informed consent form that they sign before we begin the initial evaluation. And then after that, I document that they've given me consent to treat them.
Okay. Now, you mentioned some coursework that you submitted, and that part of your probationary term was required coursework. How much of the coursework that you submitted was, I guess, extracurricular?
Over 20 units was extracurricular.
Now, we have a narrative statement that you included, that you submitted as part of your evidence. Is there anything you'd like to add that wasn't included in the narrative statement while here today?
That I have done a lot more coursework since then, and that I feel like I have greatly improved over the past several months even, how I'm continuing to practice, and, I would like to be able to practice to my fullest once this is resolved.
Thank you. Nothing further.
I'm going to ask our board members now if they have any questions, starting with our president to my right.
So, thank you, Dr. Istrom, for coming in and taking the time out to help us better understand what took place and what you'd like to see be the outcome of your appearance here today. I noticed in your packet, and by the way, yeah, you did some extensive coursework, and it's very impressive. I noticed, though, in 2022, you only took 2 courses, whereas in 2021 and 2023, you took quite a few.
Mhm.
What happened in 2022?
2022 was just like a very busy year with my family, and it just, things were moving around. We've got 2 young kids, so I was doing a lot of taking care of my kids, and it just was very hectic. So there wasn't a whole lot of time for me to be sitting down doing coursework.
What was your employment situation like in 2022?
It was still at the physical therapy office that I'm currently at, EM Therapeutics.
You also expressed that you're not really interested in having a revised probation. You really want to have your probation terminated, which is understood. But should it turn out that you don't get what you prefer, how is that going to affect you, especially with your work situation?
I don't know how it's going to affect because I don't know what those terms are. So to best answer that question, I'd have to see what kind of terms are being offered to me.
So just so we're clear, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, there's no offer of any terms, there's no
Right.
decision that's being made, and if the board makes a decision, it's not a negotiation, it's board decision. So just
Oh.
so you understand, think that we need to just focus
Yeah.
on making sure we're just clear about what it is that petitioners requested and focus our questions on that.
I didn't know that. Thank you for the explanation.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to my left.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You mentioned that you see somewhere between 12 and 16 patients a day. How many days a week do you work?
3 days a week.
And so there isn't enough work for you to come in the other 2 days.
Correct.
Is there a reason why you haven't sought employment elsewhere?
Because I have a limited license and no one is willing to hire me.
Have you tried? Have you sought that?
Yes.
How many places have you sought to be employed?
5 different places, and they've all said, you have a limited license, we can't hire you. Insurances won't take this or that, and, you know. So I've gone after it, but it's just not something that is being offered.
Okay. Have you ever discussed with your probation monitor, Mr. Martin, the possibility of working somewhere else, or this challenge that you're having of finding places that you can be employed?
Can you elaborate on the question?
Yeah, have you, when you meet with Mr. Martin periodically, your probation monitor, have you ever verbalized to him the difficulty of not being able to, like, find another employer, that you've gone out and asked several employers or applied and you were refused specifically because of the terms that you're under on your probation?
I have not to discuss that with Mr. Martin. I try to keep our conversations succinct.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so regarding informed consent, I see that you've taken the courses that were approved by the board, and some beyond that. You mentioned that patients still sign an informed consent form before they see you for the evaluation. Is that the same informed consent that we're shown today in Exhibit 1?
It is not. It is a different form because it is a different office.
I see. Language similar?
Yes, very similar language. They're all
Anything?
pretty standard in terms
Okay.
of informed consent. It's my general understanding from the ones that I've read at different offices. Because I've asked other friends to say, like, hey, what does your informed consent look like? And it all really sounds very similar.
Okay. And I noticed on that language that it's really consent for disclosing personal health information for purposes of carrying out treatment, obtaining payment, evaluating the quality of services, any administrative operations. In the coursework that you took, what other language do you discuss and what other language do you use with the patient when you are treating the patient for informed consent?
So I asked and make sure that they understand if they have any questions about anything that I have gone over with them, to make sure that they fully understand to the best of their ability and the best of my ability to explain what I've said to them, that they consent to treatment that is delineated in the plan that I've explained.
Okay. And you also took a course on sexual harassment.
Yes.
And so was there anything in that course beyond what you just described that's important for informed consent? For a patient's informed consent?
If you're going to be touching someone, you want to make sure that you explain what you're going to be doing before you do it. And make sure that they consent to whatever you will be doing before anything happens.
I think that's the piece that I was looking for, is that the patient always has the right to refuse any treatment by anyone. And
Yes.
I hadn't heard that before just now.
Oh.
So that's the big piece of informed consent that I feel like this whole thing is about.
Okay, so we need to make sure we're just asking questions.
Thank you, thank you. I think that's it, thank you.
Continuing, any questions from our board members to my left?
Yeah, just a question. You mentioned that you first moved over to the practice, the new practice, because the opportunity to grow and
as I had said, about 5.
And then, if your license is fully, reinstated, would that opportunity to go back to the involvement of that business, reappear?
I hope so, but I don't know. I also don't know if I necessarily want to continue with that office, knowing what I have learned over the past year and a half, several years of working there, in terms of growth potential of that office.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm interested in understanding a little bit about the beginning of your this issue for you regarding the citation and the time that you became aware of the problem. When you did get the citation and it was brought to your attention that there was a filed claim, did you understand what the reasoning was, or was it kind of surprising to you?
It was surprising to me,
And why is that?
because I hadn't really heard of anything about this, and I was like, what is going on? Let me backtrack. Are you talking about the citation from the board, or there was a initial investigation from the Department of Consumer Affairs that was brought on, and then I was interviewed by someone in Los Angeles, and they said, there's nothing here, don't worry about this.
Okay.
And that was the Department of Consumer Affairs in Los Angeles.
Okay, so I'm speaking of, I guess, the citation when you became aware that there was a problem that was going to be pursued.
It was a surprise because I was told that it was not gonna go any further.
Okay, but based on the information, being aware that there was a problem with the documentation, did you feel pretty confident in your documentation at that time?
Not really.
Okay.
And now I feel very confident in my documentation.
Okay, so you initially stated that you were surprised, but then you also weren't confident 100%.
Well, I was surprised that there was something happening.
Okay,
Not surprised about my documentation, I was surprised that like, why is this all of a sudden coming my way?
got it.
Yes.
And so, in looking at, like, the reasoning, I just want to have an understanding of your perspective. Was it that you feel like you had a lack of understanding of the documentation requirements? Or did you feel like you had a lack of concern about the seriousness of the documentation requirements
I'd say
at the time?
A lack of understanding.
Okay, all right. So, in looking at that now, what do you perceive now after all the additional education and documentation is maybe one of the biggest harms that can come from not documenting consent?
The biggest harm is winding up in front of the board. And, you know, obviously not being able to show what is happening in the treatment and to make sure that a client/patient is protected. And so that's why I make sure that everyone that I see gets a full, thorough explanation of what is going to be happening, and I make sure that they are okay with it, and then I document that they've consented to my treatment plan, what's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen, and then I document all that to make sure that it's all very much laid out in plain English.
Yeah, so you stated it's the biggest risk is you being here, but what about to the patient?
The risk to the patient of my failure of documentation, what do you mean?
What might be a risk to the patient if you failed to document completely or consent?
To document consent or to receive consent? The failure to receive consent is a very big problem, I would say. But to document it is a different issue, and that's why I fully receive and then document the consent.
Okay, have you had anybody refuse to consent to the care that you explained now that you are doing it?
I have. They said that I would only want to see a woman therapist, and I say, I fully understand. We cannot see you at this office. I'm very sorry. We do not have any female therapists, but thank you for coming in. And then, that's it.
And then,
And then they leave, and I say, have a lovely day, and here's a list of other female therapists in the area.
all right, thank you for the information.
Good morning, Dr. Istrin.
Hi, good morning.
What do you believe was the biggest lesson you've learned from this experience?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that documentation is paramount to having a smooth practice of physical therapy, and being able to effectively communicate with my patients is so important that it's changed how I practice entirely. That I now explain things in such detail to people, and I document things as follows, because I want to make sure that everything is understood very clearly by everyone involved.
Do you believe you're a better therapist from this experience?
I do. I like to think that this negative experience of this situation has really made me a better therapist and made me a better documenter, and I'm now able to communicate much better than I was previously before I had all this education. You get educated on these things, but like when you put it into practice and you really practice it day in, day out, you really hone the skills of being able to communicate with people.
You mentioned that your current employer has another office that you are unable to practice in because you require supervision based on your current stipulated settlement. Is that correct?
Partially. So his other office is in a different location, but it's not that. The supervision, so my supervision is not like a direct, like he doesn't need to be watching me, is my general understanding, is that,
You can ask the board members questions.
okay. So,
So what's the major issue prohibiting you from working at that other office where it's busier and there's more clients?
it's not busier.
Okay.
That's the problem. It's not
I see.
busier. Yeah.
So you're working at the office that has the most patients currently?
Yes.
Okay, understood. Your Honor, is it appropriate to call Monty Martin as a witness at this time to ask questions?
Not unless counsel or Mr. Yates intend to call him.
Okay,
I was not planning on calling him, Your Honor.
okay. Then I have no further questions.
All right, any additional questions from our board members?
A follow-up question to Dr. Brandon's is, thank you for providing us the example of the patient who preferred to be seen by a female therapist. Were there any other examples of treatment that you offered, the plan that you had offered, and the patient refused any part of that treatment? I know that as therapists, we are very personal with our patients, very hands-on in sensitive areas. Has anyone ever refused treatment that you
Well, I really,
plan to do?
at this current point in time, really stay more hands-off with all of my patients. It's more of an exercise-based situation, like, maybe we'll do some stretching and stuff, but I really, I just avoid that altogether, because the risk of someone saying something all of a sudden is not worth it to me,
So you changed the way that you practiced?
completely.
Does that include possibly omitting treatments that the patient would benefit from?
Well, I don't do like manual therapy anymore, but there are other forms of manual type therapy that is beneficial. There are now, the Hypervolt is a very effective percussion tool that can be used to like massage people. So that way I'm able to use a tool, but to not, cause any physical contact necessarily. But if someone needs like mobilization of their cervical spine because they've got, radiculopathy down their hand, that's a different situation that I'm mobilizing their neck. So it's very situational, but I really try to stay more hands-off than not.
can I ask a hypothetical situation, patient treatment situation?
Yes.
So if you had a patient come in with piriformis syndrome and you needed to get in there and do some manual treatment, would you choose not to do that treatment for that patient because you wanted to be hands-off?
I would instruct the patient how to use a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, and because that's gonna be more of a long-term solution for them, is to teach them the exercises that they can do to better resolve their issue. I really focus on patient education to give the patients the tools they need to get better. Because however often they're able to come into the office is not gonna make the difference to what they can be doing day in and day out at home.
So it's not the risk of you putting your hands on someone. Now you're saying that you prefer someone to be more self-sufficient in
It's
their care.
both,
Okay,
it's both.
thank you.
Can I follow up question, Matt?
Yes.
Just to clarify, your citation with our board is specific to documentation. Is there a reason why you're indicating changing your practice regarding your choices of interventions?
It's because getting in this kind of situation, I want to mitigate any risk of coming back in front of this board. And I want to, eliminate any potentiality, and through all this continuing education that I've done, that seems like the biggest reason why people wind up here. And so, I don't want that to happen. And I would like for, this to all be done and I finally be able to get a good night's sleep.
All right, any follow-up questions, Mr. Yates?
Nothing here, Your Honor.
Any follow-up questions, Mr. Perlman?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then, if there's no further evidence, then we can begin with closing remarks. Mr. Yates, any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you. After extensive review, it is this office's contention that the record provides a comprehensive and accurate representation of the facts and evidence. So respectfully, the people submit on the evidence. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman, closing remarks?
I just want to reiterate how much Mr. Istron has grown over in this past experience. We presented evidence to this panel of an informed consent, but he realizes that just obtaining the signature on the document is not sufficient informed consent. He has learned, he has changed his practice, and he has implemented processes, he has implemented checklists, so that when a patient comes in, although he has obtained the signature, that is just the first step in really obtaining appropriate informed consent. He needs to go through so many more additional discussions, communications, in order to advise the patient of what they can expect. And because of this, I believe he's become a much better a therapist, and we kindly request that this board terminate his probation in its entirety so that he can find sufficient employment to support himself and his family.
All right, Mr. Yates, matter submitted to the board?
Yes, Your Honor.
Matter submitted, Mr. Perlman?
Yes.
Matter submitted, and then the record is closed. We are off the record.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, so, moving along with our agenda, if you notice, item number 11, closed session. We are going to move closed session to the end of the day today, and we will go right. Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're gonna go into closed session now to, decide on the petition, and then we're gonna move the closed session to the end of the day. Bear with me, you guys. Okay, so. Thank you.
So for members of the public, we're now in recess, and we will need the room to be cleared for purposes of closed session. So we're in recess.
Thank you. All right, is this, oh, there we go. This meeting is back in session. And we are going to now move on to item number 12, our student Q&A from Unitech College in Sacramento. You know, if you guys would like to come up and seat here.
Remember, everyone that sits there is not a petitioner. A lot of staff will be sitting there tomorrow. I had to put that in.
Before we get, if I could just add a kind of a tidbit for this.
Yes.
So this is kind of returning back to a tradition that we tried to start before the pandemic, where we wanted to, through the kind of an outreach campaign, allow and agendize an item to encourage, communication between future applicants and students with the board as kind of an education opportunity. I'll let council kind of speak to this too. There may be some topics that you might have questions on that we can't discuss in this forum, but this is really an opportunity for you to kind of find out like why board members are board members, what they do, what the role of the board is, and those kind of things. So we're happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. I know it, it takes time out of your education, but we appreciate it.
It's part of our education, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you guys so much for having me here. My name is Kyle, by the way. It's very nice to meet you all. I appreciate you letting us be here and ask you questions. I'll start it off with just kind of a general question. Most of my questions are going to be pretty general to anyone who would like to answer them. But just for board members, I want to know kind of why you decided to be a board member and how long that process took, if it was more your passion to do like treatments and therapy, or if you always had a passion for legislation options and items of legislation as well.
So I will start off. So I am a public member, and honestly, I did not decide to be a board member. I actually was appointed by the Senate Pro Tem. I did not know anything about boards, and I started getting all these phone calls saying, "Congratulations, Tanya, the Pro Tem just nominated, just appointed you." I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is, or what is this? And the Senate appointment contacted me. I filled out some paperwork and took my oath. And this has been one of the best opportunities that I have had in my entire lifetime. And that I'm saying a lot. I've been on many boards. This is the best board that I've ever had an opportunity to work with. And we operate the way a board should operate. So just in case you guys did not know, yes, we have practitioners on this board, but also public members. So having the opportunity to share the public perspective in these cases has been phenomenal. So thank you for asking that. Others?
Just briefly, because I'd like to hear from our newer members as well. I was encouraged to apply. It was not on my radar at all. And so I was kind of nudged to do so. Like most of us, did not know what the board did. I paid my licensing fees. That's it. So I've learned so much. It's been very rewarding, but didn't seek it out. I was called, I guess.
I actually, this is my kind of second board, previously I'm actually a public member. So I'm also, before coming to this board, I very limited understanding of, other than, my relatives being patients of PT work, very limited understanding of what PTs really stand for. And I've only been on the board for about 5 months, but I've learned tremendously and realized how important it is. The job is success of the profession. And I am a professional myself, although it's a totally different spectrum, but I realize how important this is to, especially for the ones that are looking into a lifetime of practice, how important professionalism is, and, combined with the skill sets that we develop clinically, is where you meet with success. And just be such a glad to participate in this process and echo my colleagues who said that this is probably, based on my experience, the best function board, and really we truly take to our heart the actions we
Okay, I guess I'm the only one who wanted to be on the board. So I had had a lot of roles, very much like a couple people here. I'd been an instructor, physical therapy. I'd been a business owner, private practice, administrator at a hospital-based facility. But this is one of those things that I felt like I really wanted to have I know it sounds cheesy, make a difference. And I really believe that, Sam's right, understanding professionalism and the opportunity to really see where what we do affects the public and supporting quality and integrity on the side of the public has given me a different view of how and why I do what I do. So it's exciting. It's a learning curve, right? Because this is my first year, but it's also feels very good to contribute some of all of that background that I have to making decisions with this amazing group. And our leadership and our staff are amazing. They make the job easier, because I'm sure it could be way more complicated. And it is in many levels, but we are responsible for what our roles are, and that's that.
Hi, good morning. I was also called to the board the same way Alicia was. The prior governor, Governor Brown, was looking to diversify his boards and commissions, and specifically wanted more women on his boards and commissions. So I was asked to join. I think I was only 23 at the time. I've been on the board now for over 11 years, and feel like I've grown up around these people, and it's been an amazing experience as a public member too. I don't have any background in PT. I received PT prior to joining the board, but it's an amazing profession. You guys are really joining something that's really impactful and much needed.
That's awesome. Thank you guys all for your responses. Super interesting how some of you guys just had it kind of dropped on your desk and others really went for it. Kind of a follow-up question. I know there's a vacant slot on the board as of right now. So I'm just curious, because I know we have a bunch of different board members with so many different backgrounds and give their different perspectives on every case and everything like that. Do you think that it would be a benefit having a PTA on the board as well? Or is that a possibility? Or is there anything against that?
Hi, I'll take this one. Sure. I'd like to connote some of the board's legal counsel. So at the moment, the board member positions are only public member positions and licensed physical therapist board member positions. The legislature would have to change the law to put to create a PTA position on the board itself. But that's certainly, something you can discuss your thoughts about if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. No, I was just curious. Thank you for explaining.
Counsel, you mind if I just add one tidbit that it's a question that we get quite often. It's also a nationwide kind of question, and there are states that do have PTA representation, and California just not being one of them. For the board to kind of venture into those waters about what that opinion would be, would really have to be based from a consumer protection perspective, right? So we would, if we were ever asked, if legislation was presented, that would be this board's perspective on answering that question, is how would that benefit consumers, right? Not necessarily representation of PTAs and the profession, but really about the consumer side of it. Now, on the other side of it is the advocacy for like the professional associations like CPTA or APTA and they could speak to the advocacy for the PTA kind of representation in that viewpoint in the profession. But that's how we would really have to look at it if it was ever presented to us.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That makes it really clear. Use one, yes.
Oh, if I could go next. Hi, my name is Jade Pickens. I think my question kind of piggybacks off of my colleagues and what you guys have told us, is that how has having such a diverse board of like public members and licensed physical therapists affected any decisions you've made in the past? Because, you know, when you have PTs analyzing PTs and you have board members who maybe not had much physical therapy experience either as a patient or, you know, just in general practice, like how does that affect, I guess, just analyzing you guys as petitioners and everything, so.
I'd like to say something about that. I think that when you're a professional member and you are familiar and comfortable with your practice, I think you lose sight of some of the most important pieces from a different perspective of the layperson that may be automatic and obvious to you. And so I think it brings that perspective back to the most basic important pieces of delivering this care, right? And so sometimes it means that we'll have to slow down. What's that acronym? Why are you saying that? What is, you know, and where did that come from? Because we are so comfortable with that, it is important that we slow down and make sure that everybody understands to the most clear and simple process what that practice is and the reasons why we do things. And maybe sometimes that changes our mind about whether or not we're going to implement something because it isn't clear. And we need to make sure that to every Californian, what they're getting is what they need and it's safe.
My next to that.
So from a public member perspective, we used to have a public member who had like a life coach psychology background and really could lend his expertise during hearings like the ones you witnessed earlier this morning, really getting to the root of the petitioner's reasons as to why they may have violated the Physical Therapy Practice Act beyond just, you know, what happened in the clinical setting. Like what's really going on with you as a person, what are you dealing with? It could have been like a, you know, behind the wheel DUI situation or them dealing with addiction, and he was really good at like pulling information, not necessarily information, but like getting them to see the self-reflection piece of, you know, where they are emotionally, psychologically. So that, you know, in addition to the physical therapy education, I think was really good, like well-rounded approach to finding, you know, decisions that were appropriate.
I think my next question is, because California is just such a huge state, and if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's one of the #1 states with PTs and PTAs. So how do you manage all of that? It's just, when I looked at the numbers, I was like, you have this board, you have this building, and then you have millions of people in this state, and you have hundreds of thousands of PTs and PTAs working in this state. So just how do you go about just being able to handle that and, you know, making sure everything's fair and legal and just, you know, I guess, auditing all of it, right?
All that credit, seriously, goes to this man and his staff.
Thank you.
Like, just keeping it very real. And Jason, can you answer her question?
I thought that was going to be the next part.
Needed to be asked, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the question because, you know, when you think of the nation on a whole, we are the largest state of licensing population for physical therapists and services rendered. Just shy of 40,000 licensees. And so that's far exceeds Texas, it far exceeds Florida, it far exceeds New York. We have a fairly large staff, and we have a pretty decent support system above us, right? So we're an agency contained within the Department of Consumer Affairs. There are 38 other boards and bureaus that regulate a lot of other professions, and so we utilize some of the same services that they do, and we kind of share those services, and that's great. But I'm also kind of gifted to be the administrator of this program over this profession, because while there are, you know, a lot PTs and PTAs in the state of California, statistically speaking, you're a very well-behaved group. And the number of complaints we receive usually, is in the hundreds range, 500 to 600 complaints a year. When you think about the percentage of interactions between you and your patients and multiply that by the number of licensees and the days in the year and how many, it's pretty manageable. My staff are kind of sectioned into different sections. There's an enforcement section, there's an application section, there's a continuing competency section, and so we try to kind of specialize in those areas at the same time being cohesive and all working together, just to that main perspective of representing the consumer and making sure that, they're being provided the best and highest quality care from our practitioners possible, and really legitimizing the profession in doing so. And that's one thing that I would say is professional regulation is just that, right? It is usually spurred by the profession itself. The legislation that created this board was moved by the professional association that represented your profession. We'd like licensure. We'd like to be responsible for policing ourselves. So,
Thank you so much.
hard. And, all credit due to my staff, too. But you guys are pretty good, too.
I think my final question is not just, if I don't, just like logistics based, just an observation you guys have noticed as board members, as PTs. How has the diversification of the PTA field changed over the years? Like, has there, like, the racial diversity, the gender diversity, the age diversity, just how has it been changed over the years?
Very little. Well, Stacy's out there. She can probably speak to this better than I can, but I know that when I came into academia, it looked, the population looked very much like it looked 25 years ago when I was in PT school, which was very disappointing, by the way. However, we do have efforts on multiple fronts trying to increase diversity in many different ways in our field. Anyone else want to speak to that?
I think I just want to say, I think that the efforts to do recruitment as early as high school, trying to let people see faces of diversity and encouraging, especially in California, ability to own your own practice and then hire who you would like, and getting those opportunities to contribute in that way to the state economy and to your profession make a big difference.
Thank you so much for this insight. I really appreciate it.
I'm just curious, since I guess it's my turn now. I don't have as deep of questions as these two do, but when you went back, you were speaking about how we're so well behaved. Are there any violations that you see come through more often than not? Like, I found this morning to be super interesting, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, and and so as part of this preparation for this meeting, we put a package together, a packet of our statistics and our enforcement statistics. And in that same packet, you'll also see all of the discipline that occurred since the last meeting. And we produce newsletters also. And we try to speak to trends, like here are some violations to be aware of, and cautionary tales, if you will. Some of the things are looking at the statistics can be based in practice, complaints that we receive from consumers directly, from insurance companies regarding the way things are billed and fraud, from other licensees that have issue with how practice is being handled by other licensees. And that can be also kind of cross-disciplinary from one professional licensing, profession to another. I would say, just as a cautionary tale, when you are treating patients, always do it with the best of intentions for the patient in mind, and that always be your intent that you operate from. Documentation, I think you heard this morning, was also very key. And for PTA specifically, supervision, your physical therapists are responsible for making sure that you're supervised adequately. But it's also your responsibility as assistants to make sure that that's happening for you too. So, and that's one of the things that I would say when we do outreach for PTA programs is that you have that same kind of set of standards that even that your supervising PTs do. Just kind of keep that in mind.
Really quick, don't drink and drive.
Oh, yeah. That's what Uber's for.
There's
Thank you.
Yeah.
having those kind of well, there's other kind of convictions that, you know, are serious and could impact the ability to practice as well, but that's a very common one. And I don't know, there's somewhere people do calculations of what it costs when you get a DUI, just with all the court fees and lawyers and that goes up dramatically if you're a licensee and are on probation for an alcohol-related incident, so.
Yeah, to council's point, when we're talking about things that, sometimes the question is asked, why would this affect my license if it's something that didn't occur, you know, during my practice? You'll realize that when you go through the application process, one of the things is we do a criminal-based background check, and that's really just to determine that your judgment is sound in all aspects of your life, so that we can kind of get an idea or an insight into how you'll be as a clinician or a practitioner. So, especially in healthcare, right? For the general public to make a decision to operate a motor vehicle while impaired is one thing, but then to also have that where somebody who has extensive education in physiology and the way chemistry works in the body also make that determination and make that decision to operate a vehicle while impaired speaks to their judgment. And one of the direct results is, you know, if you happen to get a DUI and that takes you out of practice for a number of days, it might take you out of practice for the days that you might be seeing patients the very next day. Right? And so you now have kind of a direct displacement or a disruption in the continuity of care for your patients too. So there are little kind of micro ways that it does affect your consumers, but the big part of it is, what was your judgment like, and how strongly can we rely on that?
I would also say, based on being a practitioner myself, if you have a question about what's in the laws and regs, we have so many resources now on our website and available, and obviously, based on today, there's also additional information that's available in courses. And then you have the ability to contact the California PT Association to understand kind of a little bit more about what our Practice Act is as well. So don't wait until you're in a situation where someone else figured out there was a problem and you didn't, because that obviously creates other issues. But I think if you're proactive and you're understanding, you feel very confident about your understanding, or you have a question about it, that's the reason why we exist to give that information.
And let me add, from a public perspective, how would you feel as a patient knowing that your PT, who you are relying on for your health and your well-being, was just sloppy drunk less than 12 hours before they saw you? They're still drunk. And so that's why it's so important that we have the public perspective included in these conversations and decisions.
Absolutely. You talked about being proactive too. What would you recommend to us once we graduate? So we'll be graduating in 2024, getting licensed in January 2025, just to really excel once we get our license. Do any of you have just recommendations or things that you would want to share with us?
I mean, there's so many options, but I would say when you get your first opportunity for employment, look for a place that you really, look up to, that you have room to grow in terms of your understanding. Work with people that you already can tell have a really high professionalism, experience. And I would also say take advantage of any kind of continuing education opportunities that arise with conferences. That's where you get a little bit broader view of what the practice is like. Because even if you ended up at a certain place for your employment and you're like, I don't really like how they have their documentation, you go to a program that's a conference and you're like, oh, there's different ways to do this. And so then it helps you grow and you become more exposed to a lot more options on how to do your own practice.
And you receive continuing education credits for that.
Amen.
I would say seek out a physical therapist to partner with who will be a true partner. Right? They're your supervising physical therapist, but that relationship can be so symbiotic and so beautiful. You can get to know how each operates and how you both like to do things, and it can also be very toxic, or a therapist might ask you to do something you're not comfortable with. A therapist might not communicate with you the way that you need to be communicated with, and then vice versa, right? So that relationship can be so beautiful if it's done the right way. So find someone that you can really be comfortable working with, and being open and having that open line with.
I'm going to, not to exclude anyone from this conversation, but I want to speak to you directly. There aren't many Black folks, Black PTs, that our youth see today. And I would really love it when you get your license, that maybe you could look into some of the underserved, underrepresented communities. Because I feel like if our youth see someone who looks like them doing what you're doing, it can change the trajectory of one person's life or many. But I'm really happy to see you.
Thank you. That's definitely the plan too. I really want to work with either my plan going into the PTA program was to work with veterans, especially the ones who have, I don't want to say developmental issues, but like a lot of psychological issues going on. As somebody who's prior service, I just see how appreciative they are, and especially the ones who were, I'm not going to get physical therapy, this is just what's going on, this is just what happens, and then they get physical therapy, and they're just like, I'm coming back every day, I'm coming back, I'm going to camp outside the office. And definitely, especially our community, where it's like, this is just what's going to happen, this is just what it is. I've taken, like, the government's taken too much from me, I don't want to, like, just be that person, if you understand what I'm saying. So definitely want to get back and give back to my community through my own, education. So thank you for bringing that up.
Just a piece of information. Actually, to follow up on Board Chair's comment on actually providing services and commit to the community that, we grow up from, is that the national government actually, has a incentive for, professionals to work in certain communities and settings that you can get your student loan waived, right? If you commit, so that's a good incentive to promote diversity, and also to fill in the gap, because a lot of the people, a lot of the graduates tend to pursue careers outside of the communities they coming from, and there's been a lot of shortages in the areas, in the underserved areas, that we need professionals, PTs, and other healthcare professionals to be willing to go back to those communities to provide services. And so I strongly encourage graduates to think about that, at least for a period of time. You can, participate in that process, and to actually provide the access that is needed in those areas.
Thank you.
Some of the programs that Mr. Q is referring to are sponsored by what used to be OSHA, the Department of Safety, and they offer sponsorship or scholarship for education, but also loan repayment. And it is for underserved areas, and so you can find that information. They usually open a window portal of application, and it is an application process to work through, but it's something to kind of keep in mind, because I know education can be expensive.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have another question, just about, I think you talked about it originally, just about what we can expect as PTAs graduating, but from a board member's perspective, or like if you receive physical therapy, and from a PT's perspective, how can I become from a PT's perspective, how can I become more professional in my profession? And from a board member's perspective, how can I be more interpersonal at the same time? You know, because when you're a physical therapist assistant, you're very hands-on with your patients. You'll see, you know, the same patient every day, maybe 3 to 5 days a week, maybe a couple times a month. You'll get used to them. You'll see their faces. You'll probably get to know their families and stuff. And so how can I maintain that professional behavior while also being, you know, personal to them?
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure, because we encourage our students to become empathetic, right? And how do you build patient rapport without crossing the line? And so I think it comes with time and practice, because you might make a misstep here and there and think, oh, maybe I said a little too much, or maybe I shouldn't have said a certain thing. If your program has you use journals to reflect, I would highly recommend reflection journals, especially for professional growth in moments like this. But I'll tell you, I did get better at it as time went by, and reflection helped a whole lot. So I think it's trial and error, you know, caring about the patient, being empathetic with the patient, but at the same time remaining professional, keeping your boundaries, and knowing why they're there.
I definitely think that observing people model that is really important. That's why your first job is, or whatever opportunities you get to observe further, will make a big difference. I also think that we are a profession that is a lot more hands-on. We have a lot more time with our patients than a lot of other professions. We see them at some of their hardest times, and we have to be their cheerleaders. And so that does it lends itself to creating a positive therapeutic relationship, but never forgetting what that purpose is. It's for the patient, right? And like Alicia said, there's going to be times where you go, ooh, that was a little too much, or you feel a lot because you're in that environment with all of that responsibility. But I also think that having a good network of colleagues that you can kind of share and say, whoa, that patient, I was really worried about them, or I was very stressed for them, then you are kind of dissipating the intensity that you feel, but also hopefully getting some good recommendations and advice from other colleagues about how they handle it.
There will be times when you'll want to cry with your patients, and you'll discern when it's appropriate and it's okay to cry with your patients, and you'll discern when it's not okay to cry with your patients.
I think Alicia has summed it up. It's the empathy piece. Just knowing that the person that's, working on me cares about me, aside from just the therapy aspect, building that relationship, but also respecting the boundaries. I think when I think about therapists have, healed me in the past, it's the ones that I really felt like there was a personal connection with, were the ones I look forward to attending the appointments.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all this knowledge. It's just like, it makes me want to get to class right now.
Wow.
Do you guys have any further questions? No? Yeah. Thank you so much for your guys' time. That was super insightful. It was very nice.
If you guys have any further questions, ask Alicia.
Come back.
Will do. But having said that, for the rest of the duration of the meeting, after each agenda item, we'll ask for public comment. Please, feel free.
Oh, that's what I was doing. Michael, any public comment for our students here? Yes.
Yeah.
You guys can,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
For public comment? Okay, then we will take up,
Oh, no.
oh.
I was getting ready.
We will take up, okay, exactly. We'll take up where we left off on the agenda, and we are on item number 13. Kim, if you want to come forward. Review and approval of the September 13, 14, 2023 meeting minutes.
morning.
Morning.
My name is Kim Rozakis. I am the Board Relations Analyst. And I assist the board and board members with any travel arrangements, board meetings, training, and any special projects. And thank you for being here. I'm going to start on page 10 for our September meeting minutes. So page 10. Page 11.
I just have a question
Yes.
for item number 4. The edits are mentioned in the minutes, and I'm wondering, is that something new, or have we done that in the past?
We have done it on occasion, and it kind of just depends on like the relevancy and the quantity of the edit, whether it kind of needs to be stated. If, in this case, you think it was excessive, it's something that we'll just kind of record for, future use.
I'm neutral one way or the other. I just, if we've seen it before, I haven't seen it in a long time. Yeah.
On line 39, I'm a little confused with December, March 22nd, 23rd.
Oh, I think that's yeah, it's an error. December should be removed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, page 12.
Yes, on line 92, Dr. Ravina meant, there's a D on the back of her name.
Okay. Page 13.
Another question, on line 116, we had Mitch Kay present at that time, and it mentions, Mr. Kay stated, blah, blah, blah. I'm wondering, do we need to make any reference to who he is, or, because it just says Mr. Kay.
Just like clarity, either whether he's representing the association or just a member
Or
of the
himself,
public
yeah.
making the statement. Duly, yeah, we can make that notation.
And then I have an edit on line 29 and 129 and 130. It says the board has been busy, extremely busy, probably strike extremely busy, and just say we were busy.
Page 14.
Line 180 through 184, that's like one long sentence.
Okay.
And then on 183, says application to the time license are issued. Am I correct? Licenses are issued.
Jason, do you see that? I'm wondering if you would, if you recall what the gist of that was.
And the line again?
One,
Line number?
180, the end of 180 to 182. I'm wondering if it should say, Mr. Kaiser responded, right now, data is at our grasp, and it's a matter of filtering it out and looking at it.
In the second sentence as well. Another way to look at it from the point of application to the time licenses are issued and what kind of timeline is looking at.
So the discussion, the comment the Dr. Ari made was really about kind of trying to determine whether additional staffing was appropriate. And my comment was, we're able now, more than we've ever been in the past, to kind of take a look at granular data and collect that data and establish justifications for those kind of things. I didn't see any, future expectations of doing it, but our justifications are going to become much more thorough in what we provide, to the Department of Human Resources and, trying to state or justify a need for additional staffing. because the data is becoming a little bit more at, you know, arm's length, we can just grab it whenever we need it.
So maybe just taking out is where data?
Yeah, I think that still captures that, right? Responded right now, the data is at our grasp, and it's just a matter of filtering out and looking at it.
I'm going back to line 153, where it says, a pretty very busy. So, I guess we can take the pretty out, or?
Yeah.
And also, line 157, vacant, Mr. Kaiser responded, vacancies are taking longer.
I have another one on line 176. It states that he feels the board is good. Can we just maybe wordsmith that a little bit and maybe say the board is sufficiently staffed or something of that sort?
Okay. Page 15.
Line number 192, the September 21 and 22, it should be 2023, not 2024.
Yeah, and again, maybe like the,
Oh, no, that.
No.
that's right.
That's, so Ms. K was reporting on what the dates would be for next year's.
Oh, I was on their
Annual meeting.
website and their conference was on September 21st and 23.
Right, and what he was stating at that was reporting the location and the actual date range for next year's, so we could kind of plan that
Gotcha.
into our calendar.
Got you, okay.
And maybe just add again, Mr. K reported, I don't know,
On behalf of the
On
CPTA,
behalf of
I mean, in that capacity, I think that was his role.
yeah, yeah.
On line 198, says, Mr. Kaiser responded, that is a really hard comparison, and maybe because there are certain things about the board's application process that may differ. And then if you go down to 200, they can only test 4 times a year. That should, maybe it should say, whereas another profession may have continuous testing.
Can you, on 207, where it says Dr. Brennan asked the fixed dates and number of applications, can you clarify which other discipline board?
Okay. Page 16.
Oh,
Oh.
209, I'm sorry. Application process alone, the closest.
Okay.
And then on line 220, can we spell out what DFI means?
Page 16. Page 17. Page 18.
Can we go back to page 17?
Yes.
Can we state who Ms. Gear is, or did we say it? Her first name? I don't think so.
Okay. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. Page 21.
So on page 21, there's several places where, for instance, on line 421 and 422, it says statute. And if we just,
Statute.
yeah, if we just control F statutes,
Yep.
I think it's, yeah, in there several times, just change it.
Page 22.
At the bottom on line 488, I think it's Dr. Rabina Amen asked if this individual coming in.
Page 23.
I'm picking on Mr. K again. But this time I think he's representing himself.
Yeah, and I think that we'll just have to kind of make a note at the time. It's been, aside from Mitch K, we've had other representatives that have been very clear when they come to the table that whether they are representing themselves as a member of the association or just their personal viewpoint. So
Yeah.
we'll try to record that in real time.
Going back to page 22, line 473, where it says depending on the signing order received, there may be a filed.
Yeah, it should be file. Okay. Page 24.
23 at the very top on line 495, and I think this is up for debate. We can change it or not change it, but I was a little unclear about, Mr. Kaiser responded if there were anything the board could do other than the situation they are in now, they might have done it differently. It's just a little vague for me. I get the intent. Yeah.
Just want to make sure staff has everything they need in terms of that edit.
I think that the actual line can be struck. I mean, it's not, it wasn't a point of action. I think it was a response to kind of the caution and warning. But we didn't really have any control over legislation that was leveled at the national level. So I mean, just striking the line in its entirety, I'm comfortable with. I mean, the explanation that I added that the federal statute is something the board had no control over suffices.
Yes.
It's just an example of when I talk too much.
Okay, page 24. Page 25. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. page 32.
On page 32.
Yes.
Line 842, 843. Where it says Mr. Kaiser added the second edition, you could have to have one physical location where the public can participate. And in that location, the majority of the members, but you could have exemptions for things. I don't recall what the things were. It's a very long sentence anyhow. It continues. Can we addend that with the intent of the, what's the meaning of that sentence?
Yeah, second edition is probably the wrong way to say it. It's probably exactly how I said it. But kind of looking back at it, it was just trying to clarify how the actual legislation reads in that situation where essentially 50% of the meetings would have to be done one way, the other 50% would have to have in attendance participation. But
Could we take out the but you could have exemptions for other things and put or how would you say, and the other members can participate remotely?
I think that between those two commas can be struck, and then instead of, but the other members can participate remotely, could read, it could just say, the members, comma, the majority members would have to be present, comma. The other location members could participate remotely. And that they would not have to display or provide access to the public at that location. You write that out.
Page 33.
At the bottom, we talked about the two different evaluation tools for foreign educated physical therapists. And I think that sentence probably needs to be wordsmithed. Really, what I asked for was if staff might be able to report back at a future meeting, how often the PET is being used and how often the paper CPI is being used. And then I had an additional comment that the CPI has been updated to a new version.
Doctor, I asked about the two different evaluation tools and if the board could provide statistics on how often each of the tools are being used. Okay.
And also made a comment about the CPI being updated to a new version. So I know that we're still using the paper CPI, but the CPI itself is now a 3.0 version.
So, but this is in direct reference to foreign educated and foreign educated only?
It is.
So the CPI that is legislatively authorized to be used for foreign is still that 1997 1.0. And so I guess you're saying it's essentially it's even more antiquated than it was when we started to address this
Just
problem?
trying to make a plan.
Okay, got it. We'll accentuate it.
Thank you.
Page 34.
Line 910 should have a C in clinical instructors. 2 Cs, sorry. And another I.
Yeah.
I have a question about line 913 in public comment. If a member of the public comes up and identifies themselves, do we still note that in our minutes? Who the public, because I think when we take public comment, we aren't supposed to really, or we're not supposed to ask their name, is that correct? But
It's
I know
not-
that sometimes they offer their name.
Yeah, it's not a requirement, and it's not something, so it's not something we could enforce and ask someone to do. They're more than welcome to make public comment and essentially refuse to identify themselves. In this instance, I think we did it because it was offered and it was open. I don't know that it's much of an issue. We have a recorded archive of the webcast that somebody would still be able to see that. And this is just kind of that almost transcript, if you will, in documenting it and writing. We certainly could remove it. I don't think it would have any effect either way. And just identify that it was during public comment, a member of the audience said.
I think that's what I'm getting
Okay.
at, is if someone were to look at this, they'd say, who's Mr. Armstrong?
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, in line 913, is there a reason potential is capitalized?
No, no. Page 35.
9:55. Dr. Abina Amen asked what the analysis of the effectiveness of our social media campaigns comes from looking at TikTok. So I think we can just
Remove that.
turn that into something else. And then 9:58, April responded, when comes to the followers, non-followers can still access the board's page. Just a little edit there.
Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39.
Line 1103, you can remove that extremely motivated, because it says shared enforcement staff is extremely experienced and extremely motivated. Remove the second, extremely.
And then page 40. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much.
Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the last board meeting minutes with the edits provided.
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment?
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. Can't hear myself. Tamika Island with the CPTA. Just several edits that I noticed, starting with page 13, line 116. Mr. K should be spelled Kaye, please. Page 15, line 192. The same, Mr. K should be spelled Kaye, please.
And we'll just do a search through that document.
Okay, thank you. And then page 23, line 495, credentialing is misspelled. Thank you.
I think we need a new motion.
I think if it's, we can do that, we can amend the motion, or we can use that procedure where if no one objects, we can also add those changes to the minutes. So does anyone object So that, okay, so those will also be considered edits made at the meeting in terms of Member Brandon's motion.
Tanya McMillian,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong. Armstrong is absent. Karen Brandon. Aye. Katarina Eleby.
Aye.
Samuel Q.
Aye.
Alicia Benaimon.
Aye.
5-0, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, President's Report. Find your meeting calendar on page 41, and Jason.
You might recall that at the last meeting, we voted and adopted the 2024 calendar, but as has happened in the past sometimes, we have had some scheduling conflicts come up, and now we need to reintroduce that calendar for consideration. The Department of Consumer Affairs has had some shuffling of assignments when it comes to a lot of the different pro rata things that we receive from them, and one of those is our legal counsel has been assigned to a couple other clients, and we do have some board meeting conflicts to consider for March and September, and I'll let Michael kind of touch on that a little bit.
First, yes, it's my fault.
As long as you're still our counsel, right?
I am still your counsel.
That was scary for a second there.
No, it was
Okay.
still there.
And the changes, the changes dramatically reduce the number of clients that I have. But I'm the new legal counsel for the Board of Accountancy. And there are a couple meetings that conflict. One being Accountancy has a meeting March 21st and 22nd in Southern California. And then in September, similarly, they have a meeting the 19th and 20th of September, probably in Southern California.
And you might recall, we were doing some juggling of the calendar even when we adopted this calendar. And we were looking at opportunities for Loma Linda University to host a meeting, and also trying to incorporate the idea of having Sacramento State University host a meeting in the future too. Also, all the while trying to account for CPTA's annual convention and making sure that while they are going to be in the Bay Area, and the dates are relatively close together in the same week, we would have the board meeting during the week and then their annual convention that weekend, that we didn't want to be in LA while they are in San Francisco and try to have that difficulty in travel. A proposal, if you will, and something to be considered is the scheduling conflict the council has for the March meeting. Their meetings are a Thursday, Friday, and typically our meetings are a Wednesday, Thursday. And so there's really only a day overlap. In this situation, I think we can move our meetings just ahead one day and do a Tuesday, Wednesday instead of trying to displace the whole week. And that, assuming that it works well with your calendars as members, could be an alternative and still accommodate the scheduling conflict, and we'll just be mindful of those assignments moving forward for the 2025 calendars too. So trying to keep our meeting in the same week range, but instead of doing Wednesday, Thursday, we could do Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we wouldn't have that direct. It would make a very busy week for Michael, because he'll have 2 board meetings in the same week. Covering dates first base, that's one of the recommendations that staff would make. The second is really kind of location then at that point. And the way I understand it now today is that March meeting is a Southern California meeting for accountancy. So to try and look at that, we were looking at possibly doing Loma Linda, moving it a day difference. We would have to kind of work out whether that's doable or not for our hosts.
I just got information on that if you want me to share when you're
Please.
ready. So the spring recess for all of the schools, including the School of Allied Health, happened to be the 18th. So I know it's not ideal, but
Got it, okay.
But in looking at when they resume for post-summer break, the concept of doing it the week after the CPTA, I don't know if it's a possibility, but they resume on September 23. So any time after September 23, is that still a possibility for the Southern California hosted meeting at Loma Linda University?
So I guess what I might recommend then at that point is, it's very important for us to return back to Loma Linda. It's been a long time since we've been there, so I'll just start with that as kind of a point of intent. And how that influences my recommendation for March would be that we would look at just coming back here to Sacramento for our March meeting. That makes it difficult for Michael, though, because that would be Sacramento in March, and then for a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then be in LA Thursday, Friday. And so I'm not sure might have to look at how functional that is.
I have a thought. There are times when we have remote meetings where school's in session and we get no students.
Mhm.
Student participation is really important, but I just wonder if, even if there may not be students who show up, would we still consider having the meeting at that location?
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead
And-
of trying to move it to another time, I mean, we still want our council with us, so.
What is the challenge with moving the March date to accommodate, I mean, if we're having it here, or are we having it at a school?
So we were looking at Loma Linda for March,
Mhm.
and we could still look at that, to Dr. Ari's point, right? And then that might make it a little bit easier for Michael, since he will be required to go to Southern California shortly after that. We just wouldn't have the benefit of students, which sometimes we're used to that. We've been to schools where there aren't any students in session, but it's still beneficial to make those connections with staff. And then I think there's an optic and representation there also that is beneficial. So that's still definitely doable. I mean, that's what all we would be changing is that Loma Linda would be in March. We would just be asking to move it a day forward. Tuesday, Wednesday, when we were Wednesday, Thursday.
So I guess my question is, if we were to move it to September, what were our options for location in March? That was my question.
We don't have one, and
Oh.
that's why I'm suggesting Sacramento, because logistically, to try and find another Southern California host
yeah.
might be difficult.
Oh, I see. So then that would mean that we would be looking for Southern California, not Northern California for the March, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
But we could still go to Loma Linda in March and just move it forward a day if they're able to account for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the intention, the hope was that students would be around. There will be students that are going to be doing their affiliations and internships. So we can always call on them. It's just that then you have to go to the individual, hosts of those students and see if they can take that time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's a bit of a challenge, but yeah, in terms of hosting, they're definitely committed to hosting.
Yeah.
So if that's the will of the board and that works out.
And I would imagine, so do you have any insight as to the size of a cohort that Loma Linda is running through right now? The number of students in a class?
I don't, but I could find that out. It's quite a bit, and usually it's the first and second year that are most available. The third year oftentimes is already off campus.
Yeah. And I'm just reflecting on our experience today with Unitech, and while only having 3, a very kind of positive interaction, right? And so while some of the Loma Linda students may not be available, just having a handful or even would be, in my opinion, worth the while.
Yeah, I think we can potentially advertise with the local offices, PT offices, to find out who is having students during that time and who's available.
So I hear availability of keeping March in Southern California at Loma Linda, moving it to 19th, 20th instead of 20th, 21st. How does that rest with the rest of the members' schedule and calendar?
I'm available.
Yeah? Okay. Let's pin that one and say that we're decided and then move to the September time.
One more thought just before we move on is if there are any PTA programs in the vicinity, we can always invite those
Oh,
students as well.
absolutely. And we've talked about at any time that we're being, hosted at an education, at a campus, that we're not limiting it to just students of that campus. Obviously, that we want to encourage participation from, especially in Southern California, in the density local programs, if they're able to kind of commute in. We would love that also. For September, we could query Sacramento State University to find out if there is availability to host the week after CPTA's convention, so that we're still Northern California, we're still traveling to the Bay Area to provide outreach to the CPTA conference, and then host here with Sacramento State University. And while it's still Sacramento and we're here in Sacramento, it is a new opportunity in the sense that we would be traveling to their campus. We will just have to find out if their availability is still, And that's something that we can work out. We have a little bit more time. It was more important really to get the March meeting kind of locked down here.
So the proposed dates for September are the 25th and 26th?
I would think the 25th and 26th traditionally, but we might have to, based on our communications with Sacramento State University, be maybe somewhat flexible, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, or something like that, but the week of.
And what's the rationale for changing the dates?
I don't know that Sacramento State University was available 18th and 19th. Okay, so it may be that when we come back with that recommendation, it stays. The rationale being internally that Michael will be required to be in Southern California the 19th and 20th
Okay.
for his
got
other
it.
client.
Got it.
And it's not final where that meeting is. And if I need to have a meeting here and a meeting in Southern California, I'll do that. It's not a problem.
I would just note that I want that's demonstrative of how far in advance we plan our calendars, and I'm not recommending that we don't do that. I like to have my calendars 2 years in advance, but even accountancy hasn't really solidified where their Southern California location is going to be for that date range yet.
Jason, may I ask if the Board of Accountancy is a new client, why aren't they accommodating our current schedule?
That's a very good point, and I will tell you that they are. There was a conflict for December, and part of the negotiation was that we are not moving the December meeting, so.
If Sac State does not work out, I'm happy to work with staff on seeing if we can get something in the Bay Area.
We would appreciate it, yeah. And we have kind of our client list to refer back to too, and there's some ones on there that we've been working at returning to that we haven't been to in a very long time, and that's still a very open and real possibility also. Sac State's been kind of a feather in my cap that I've been waiting for quite some time though, so I'm partial.
So, the June date, I know for a fact I will not be available, so just that ahead of time.
In the week of, in its entirety, or just the 2021st,
Yeah,
or?
Yeah, it's a Juneteenth week, and I'm
Okay.
gonna be in Alabama, so a Juneteenth event.
Okay. Is there a will of the members to consider the week in advance of that, or
I'm fine.
is that I mean, does that still work for your, like, travel
Yes.
accommodations and those kind of things? It's always good to hash these conversations out in advance, right? That's the one I didn't anticipate. So, looking at June, we may want to consider the 12th or the 13th and 14th.
The 14th is Flag Day. Is that a national holiday? No.
National holiday, yes. The holiday that we're still required to work, yes.
Okay.
Yes to both?
Possibly no to the first week, but yes to the second week.
That is scheduled here. So staff will not have issues with which week in June that we prefer, because we'll be hosting here in this room. So we'll just make sure that we have the availability. Worst case scenario is maybe the availability is not available. We might end up at HQ1 or HQ2 or a Lake Tahoe room kind of situation, so.
I am available every workday in June. Sorry, I had to just point that out.
I could make that first week work.
Alicia, what do you mean by first week? Can you say the dates?
Is it the 13th?
That's actually the second week of June.
Yeah,
Oh,
because I was going to say I can't make
Well,
first week work.
it's
Yeah.
barely the second week, because like, the first is the Saturday, and then it rolls in, so. But we are, 13th to 14th is what we're talking about for June.
I can make it work.
Yeah. We usually do Thursday, Friday when we're in Sacramento. So I think I'm going to ask for a motion to consider the March and the June dates. Staff and I will get back to you on the September dates for more information at the March meeting, so I don't think we need to address that quite yet. A little irregular, I know, but we're doing some adjustments on the fly. And so as proposed, March, we would be asking to a Southern California meeting in Loma Linda on the 19th and 20th, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And then here in Sacramento in June on the 13th and 14th.
So moved.
Aren't we adopting the entire calendar?
You can't, I don't, it's a kind of a formality that I wouldn't recommend because September is still in the air. We're not sure our host's availability for the September meeting for 24. And the adoption of the calendar schedule-wise is something that we do just as a matter of practice, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
So can we clarify the motion again and the dates?
As proposed, March will be at Loma Linda University on the 19th and 20th. For June, back here in Sacramento on the 13th and 14th. And September is still to be determined. We don't anticipate it changing too much, but and then I guess for just the extended clarity, the whole calendar, December would still be in Sacramento on the 5th and 6th.
So we have a motion for a second. Discussion. Public comment?
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong. Dale Armstrong is absent. Karen Brandon.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Samuel Q.
Aye.
Alicia Benet Med.
Aye.
5-0, motion carried.
And now we'll move on to 2025.
Staff do not have any recommendations for changes for the 2025 calendar. I'll just say that up front. At this time, for clarity.
Can I get a motion for adopt 2025?
I think we adopted next year.
Is that correct?
We haven't adopted 2025. We wouldn't do it until essentially, yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you. Any public comment on the proposed 2025 calendar? Hearing none. Okay, moving on, item number 15, the executive officer's report. Jason, start with that, check.
Just 1 second. I think I can be brief and beat the clock for lunch.
Okay.
I just need to pull up my notes. Actually, I take that back. I emailed it to myself this morning, and I'm having internet issues retrieving it. I think we should recess for lunch, and I'll report quickly when we return.
We have, item number 16, Consumer Professional Associations and Intergovernmental Relations Reports. FSBPT?
I'll try to do that. So that's part of my notes also, but I'll try to do that part kind of on the fly. As you might remember at the last meeting, there was a legislative change that eliminated essentially the travel ban on states that had laws that were discriminatory in nature, which allowed us to travel to Jacksonville, Florida. And so one, I would say, as a thanks to the Department of Consumer Affairs Board and Bureau of Relations, the Director, Kimberly Kirkmeyer, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for their quick review and approval of that very last minute out-of-state travel request. And then also a thanks to Sam Cui and Katarina Ellaby for attending the conference with me and providing representation for the state of California. We were able to kind of divide and conquer and attend a number of educational sessions when it came to national pressing issues like things we've already kind of touched on in even strategic planning, like artificial intelligence and sexual misconduct violations and trauma, empathetic investigations and things like that. It was, I think, a robust presentation, and it was very well attended. There were representation for almost all states in the United States. There were still a few states that did not make it, which I think is kind of to be expected returning from a pandemic. I think I would kind of leave it open for the two members that attended to, add anything to it. I will say that we did have some unfortunate circumstances occur in our travels, but we had some swapping of delegate and alternate delegate roles. And I will say that Sam Q lived up to those expectations very well. I know that we are, as California, we are kind of the large state in the room, and so we're constantly being bombarded by other states and questions and asking how we do things and those kind of things. And this was essentially Mr. Q's first experience having done that very quickly in his experience as a board member. One board meeting under his belt and straight to Florida to represent the nation. And they did a pretty good job at keeping us separate and, you know, leaving him to fend for himself. And I will say that he did an extremely good job in doing that. But I'd like to hear his side of it as well.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
I was really honored to have the opportunity to represent this board, and represent the state of California in the Federation Conference. And I have learned in the 2.5 days of meetings, I think, about 20 years of information. To some degrees are overwhelming, and the acronyms that were presented take probably a couple months to digest. But aside from that is that being involved to that degree give me the opportunity to really learn about the present issues that the industry is trying to deal with and address moving forward. And I have, the DEI issues. I attended, I selected a couple of areas that I thought it would be helpful for me to solicit a better understanding of how, what we presented with. And so I attended the DEI sessions, and it was a general, actually, session on boundary violations, both sexual and non-sexual. I thought that was tremendously important for us to understand it. I also try to understand the importance of data sharing and the importance of open access for practitioners across state borders, et cetera, understand what compact represents and how the state of California is in a position of dealing with those issues. And throughout the process, I realized that under this board and Jason's leadership, I think the state of California really represents a very important part of the current and future development of the Model Practice Act and the various issues related to innovations, data collections, data reporting, continued confidence. And one of the areas I wanted to sort of emphasize on and made an impact on me is that a lot of the cases that we actually manage and made me realize are results of professional fatigue. Professional fatigue could be a result of the professional practice, or it could be related to personal life and development of practitioners. And I do recognize that in the conference, they emphasize that the importance of self-assessments to address those issues and the mental health connections related to the professional fatigue that causes a lot of violations. People get into substance type of abuse because, different pressure points of life. And, the importance of, especially, when we get into, 15, 20 years of practice is when I believe you hit those type of roadblocks, how it's important to address those type of issues professionally. I think it's moving challenge that we, as profession need to sort of meet. And, appreciate the board's connection with the association as well, because that relationship and collaboration, I think it's what makes the process complete in terms of educational and the actual practice and the protection of the public interest complete. Understand there was a session on trauma-informed interviews. It gives me an insight on how investigations are conducted and what are the information that are collected and how it was approached to solicit evidence to support investigations, and that was very informative to me as well. And all in all, that conference just gave me a wealth of information. It's an in-depth education to me, and made me wanted to get involved even more in terms of specific areas and truly understand the regulatory backgrounds of how the PT and PTA professions moving forward should be. Thanks again for that opportunity.
Ms. Ellaby?
I just wanted to say I always love participating in FSBPT conferences because we're able to discuss topics that don't always come up in board meetings. So I'm glad you were able to do the deep dive into all of those, little nuggets of topics.
Yeah, it was unfortunate what happened to you, but I became the beneficiary of it. Even in the sense of getting extra dinners.
Yeah, but those dinners are still opportunities to be drilled. The one thing that I would add to it is FSBPT is still looking for a number of different volunteers for a number of different task forces. So I might be reaching out to you individually to look for volunteers for those kind of things. The only one that I've heard back about yet at this point is I was serving on the sexual misconduct committee for FSBPT, and my term ran out, but I've now been reappointed to that same committee to continue to work on those resources. So
Congratulations.
thank you. There are a couple other things that we're also interested in participating on, but I don't think, that was just in October. So they're still trying to kind of work where they can get equal representation across the nation and pull us into committees when it's appropriate, so.
Thank you, Jason. Item B, DCA.
Hi, Yvonne.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, actually, afternoon, 4 minutes in. All right. Well, my name is Yvonne Durantes. I am the Assistant Deputy Director over Board and Bureau Relations. All those emails you guys receive from Member Relations, those are for me. So I am here to provide you with several updates on the department, some on agency as well. If there are any questions or anything that needs to be repeated, feel free to either jump in or have me repeat. A lot of the information is also included in our fall newsletter, which was published last month, and also the December monthly email that will be distributed next week to board presidents and vice presidents. So please bear with me. There are quite a bit of updates, but I'm hoping that they are helpful. All right. Well, starting off with our Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency update. On December 28th, Governor Newsom appointed Tamika Moss as Secretary of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Secretary Moss has been the founder and CEO of All Home since 2019 and previously served as the CEO of Hamilton Families from 2017 to 2019. Secretary Moss was chief of staff at the Oakland Mayor's Office from 2015 to 2017, the Executive Director of Hope San Francisco in the San Francisco Mayor's Office from 2013 to 2015, and is the Board President of the Nonprofit Housing Association of Northern California. And so we want to extend a warm welcome to her and wanted to pass along that update on our leadership.
Excuse me if I may, you said December 28th.
November 28th.
November, thank you.
Yes. And in the meantime, we do have an interim secretary. Moving on to a DEI update. On November 7th, a UMass consultant, Christopher Veal, provided a virtual training entitled DEI Dialogue for Leaders to 173 DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. Veal's training covered psychological safety and how it affects these conversations, as well as interactive discussions about the challenges that leaders are facing. Participants were given a training survey, and the feedback was extremely positive. Next Friday, the DEI Steering Committee will hold its quarterly meeting on December 15th. The committee will review a draft DEI intranet webpage that is currently being developed, elect a 2024 chairperson and vice chairperson, and discuss DEI training as it remains a committee priority. Once operational, the DEI intranet page will provide all DCA employees information and resources, including DEI hiring principles, which will serve as a guide for those involved in the hiring process. The DEI Steering Committee would also like to continue to learn about and showcase DEI activities of DCA's boards and bureaus. So if your board does have anything to share in regard to DEI highlights or anything you want to showcase, please feel free to share that information with us. And you can send that to Member Relations or either to Melissa Gear or myself. Moving on to, DCA continues to support DCA boards and bureaus in expanding culturally competent communications and promote the importance of meeting the needs of California consumers, licensees, and applicants. And the latest issue of DCA's Consumer Connection magazine includes articles with information important to consumers, including a feature cover story translated into 4 languages to further the reach of this information. The magazine is also available on DCA's homepage, and printed copies of this magazine are also available. If you'd like copies, please email consumerconnection@dca.ca.gov. Moving on to the military portal launch on November 29th. The department successfully launched a new process and portal in support of service members and their families following new federal and state laws passed this year. Known as the Federal Professional License Portability and State Registration Portal, this new DC online portal will allow boards and bureaus to accept online requests from military service members and their spouses who currently hold a valid license in good standing in another state, district, or territory to register their practice in California within the same profession or vocation, if relocated to California because of military orders. This online portal will allow DCA to properly receive, track, and review requests to ensure compliance with federal and state law. In addition, DCA's military resources page and board and bureau licensing webpage have also been updated with federal professional license portability and state registration information. It is vital that we provide service members and their families coming to California under military orders with the highest level of customer service and assistance. DCA continues to strongly encourage all boards and bureaus to streamline internal processes, use single points of contact for military licensure requests, and process all military requests as quickly as possible. Developed and implemented completely by DCA staff, this is a huge accomplishment that we are very proud of, and of the talent and teamwork that was made possible by this portal. Moving on to in-person meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As a reminder, DCA boards and bureaus may conduct entirely remote public meetings without noticed locations accessible to the public through December 31st of 2023, so long as the public is able to participate in the meeting remotely. Commencing on January 1st of 2024, 4 meeting options will be available pursuant the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Option 1 is the traditional single location option. This is a meeting where the majority of members are gathered at one publicly noticed accessible location. No members are participating remotely, and there is no requirement to allow for remote public participation. Option number 2 is the traditional teleconference option, in which board members are located at different publicly noticed and accessible locations, and they are connected via phone or WebEx, and there is no requirement to allow for remote public participation. Option number 3 is the new teleconference option, in which a majority of board members are gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. The extra board members above a majority can participate remotely from a private non-public site, and the meeting must allow for remote public participation. And finally, option number 4, which is the new advisory body teleconference option. All members of an advisory body can participate remotely from a private non-public meeting site. The meeting must have at least one publicly noticed and accessible location where at least one board or bureau staff member is present and where the public can participate in the meeting. Additionally, the meeting must allow for remote public access. And so DCA encourages boards to continue working with your board council to ensure compliance with the Open Meeting Act, as we will have these changes beginning January 1st, which is just a couple weeks away. Moving on to required board member trainings. I think we've talked about it in the past couple months, and we've sent several emails about it, and so I don't want to burden you more with it, but we do have the December 31st deadline coming up. So if you have not completed your sexual harassment prevention training, that is due December 31st. And if you don't remember whether you've taken it or not, because it is due every 2 years, so you may have taken it last year and you are within compliance, you can email me or talk to me during any of the breaks, and I can pull up your training transcript and let you know if you are missing any of the trainings. If you do also have a DCA email, I'm not sure if your board members.
We do.
Yeah. So if you have a DCA email, you do also need to complete the information security awareness training. That is, I think it's only like a 15 or 20-minute training. So that's also due December 31st. And both of these trainings are available on our learning management system, and you can take them at any time. And just a reminder as well, with the sexual harassment prevention training, there are 2 options. And given that you are a part of a board, you do need to take the supervisory rather than the non-supervisory training. And I will skip over the out-of-state travel updates because Jason just covered it, so I'll spare you that. And so I'll move on to our Promise campaign, the State Employees Giving at Work campaign. And in partnership with board members, DCA will continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities. This year's Our Promise Giving at Work campaign is underway, and it runs also through December 31st. And leading this year's efforts are DCA's co-chairs Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and myself. And so this annual campaign gives state employees, including board members, an opportunity to support nonprofits of your choice. You can do this through a one-time donation starting as little as $5, or make continuous donations throughout the year. And you can make contributions to any cause of your choice, such as those experiencing poverty, homelessness, food insecurity, and support causes such as veterans, animals, and the environment. So if you do have any questions in regard to that, please let me know. I'm happy to assist you. We did also send an email to all board members last week during Giving Tuesday. It does include the step-by-step as to how to give guide, So if there are any questions, feel free to let me know. And we will also actually be having a nonprofit fair at headquarters next Tuesday, in which we will have many nonprofits on site in case you do want to take an opportunity to go talk to them and learn more about what they do. And so, happy to answer any questions in regard to that. And along the lines, State Employee Food Drive is currently collecting any donations as well. The California State Employees Food Drive started this month and it runs through January 8th of 2024. And so this does help support families in need. And the collection boxes are at HQ1, HQ2, the Bureau of Automotive Repair out in Rancho Cordova, the Contractor State License Board office location, and here, which is Evergreen. And so employees and board members can drop off any non-perishable items in the boxes at these designated locations through January 8th. Just touching base again on the fall newsletter, in case you did miss it, it is posted on our webpage under the board members resources page, and so there is a lot of information on there. There's a summary of all the required trainings on there, as well as some of our leadership changes updates as well. And so, you know, as we do come to an end, I cannot believe it's already December. I just cannot believe it. And so, thank you for your year of service. Thank you for everything you've done. And so, I am here as a resource for you. Happy to answer any questions or anything you need, not just today, but anytime. So, thanks for bearing with me with all of these updates. I know it was quite a bit, but at this moment, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any specific times for the donation drop-offs?
There's no specific times. It's probably just when the building is open, which is what, the typical Monday through Friday, 8 to 5?
Friday, 8 to 5.
Yeah. So during those windows, and so I'm sure, you know, if those times doesn't work for you, we could arrange something else if you'd like to contact me. But it is only through January 8th that they are collecting. So a little over a month. Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any public comment for Yvonne? Hearing none?
Great. And then I did just remember that we are working on our tentative dates for the board member orientation trainings for 2023. I know I've received a lot of questions in regard to that. So if you are awaiting for those dates to make your plans, we will be releasing those dates within the next month. So I will be sending those out to all board members for your awareness, especially if you are on the list of you need the training, you will be receiving a direct email. So stay tuned.
Do you have any ideas to the in-person Sacramento? Maybe
Yeah,
what
so
month?
it's looking like the in-person Sacramento will likely be March and October. The June date will likely be in Southern California, likely LA. That's what it's looking like. Those are all tentative, so we will be releasing the final, and it will include details on the locations. Mhm. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C, California Physical Therapy Association, CPTA.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I will try to make this as brief as possible so that we can get to lunch. I'm Stacy Defoe. I'm Executive Director for the California Physical Therapy Association. Just wanted to give you just a couple updates and highlights on things that we're looking at working on. We did host our annual conference in Long Beach in October, and with 440 attendees, and the PT board was in attendance as an exhibitor, front and center, and very busy, so hopefully I looked like it was working out well for both the board and the attendees, who were happy to have the ability to ask questions and things like that. So thank you for coming. We appreciate that. Membership is going pretty strong. We are at more than 10,000 members, and we continue to grow year over year. So we're happy about that. And I've heard DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion mentioned a few times today, so I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on a couple of things that CPTA is working on in that area. At our recent board meeting, we adopted a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this will go with our mission, vision, goals as part of our commitment that's embedded hopefully in everything that we do. And the commitment is California Physical Therapy Association is committed to building and sustaining a community that empowers all constituents as an inclusive organization that values diverse backgrounds, identities, and experiences to foster belonging and promote equity to meet the needs of membership and society. So that will be embedded in our overall mission, vision, and goals. And then there's one thing that we've been working on at CPTA that not sure that we've mentioned before. It's called the Challenge for Change. It was created by our Diversity Affairs Committee, and you can find information about that on the CPTA website under Challenge for Change. And what it is we've created ways for individuals and districts, CPTA districts, and academic institutions to look for ways to promote diversity or to gain knowledge or share knowledge or do various activities in efforts to promote diversity. And there's lots of ideas and information on the site on how you might do that. And then we have a link for if you've accepted the challenge and you do one of those things, that if you could submit a reflection on that, and we're gathering those just to see what people are doing and to show that people are interested in engaging with this. So I just wanted to promote that and let you all know that's there. Education-wise, we host our webinar Wednesdays. They continue to be very successful. As of November, we've hosted 30 webinar Wednesdays, so that's about 3 per month on average, with an average of 51 attendees per course. So people are interested in virtual education. That continues to be kind of the preference for most people. We did attempt a couple of in-person courses this year. They did go, but with lower registration than we would hope. So it just shows us that people are still a little bit hesitant. That in our conference was a little lower as well, a little hesitant to get back out, but we are continuing to look at that and try new things. Our webinar Wednesdays, though, will continue next year. We're already booking out for next year. Jason Kaiser presented one of our webinar Wednesdays this year, and we would love to bring him back again next year, so we'll be in contact about that. It was well-attended, well-received webinar for us. We still, I've mentioned before, our Modernization Review Task Force. This is a task force that's been created to look at the Practice Act and ensure that it's allowing PTs to practice at the level of current education. So where we are now is the task force has taken a look at the Practice Act, developed some draft language. We've spent the year kind of sharing what the task force has been working on with internal stakeholders. Next year, we'll focus on external stakeholders. No legislation on our part is anticipated for next year. We're still more of sharing and information gathering at this point, but we will keep you all posted on that. We do have a town hall meeting that's scheduled for January 25th, and the focus of that meeting will be the modernization of the Practice Act. So all are welcome to attend that. And advocacy, we have some efforts that we'll be looking at for 2024. 2023, just in general, we were very focused on getting to know the new legislators that were elected in 2022. At that point, there was a 30% turnover. And just want to mention that in 2024 election, the expected turnover will be 50% in the legislature. So it will be even more new faces and more new people to get to know. But that's something that we'll be focusing on both in the election process and then once people are elected. We have Physical Therapy Legislative Day scheduled for March 12th. And again, all are welcome. At the recent CPTA board meeting, the board approved moving forward with legislation that would allow PTs to sign off on disability placards. So that would be, that would amend the California Vehicle Code provisions relating to physical therapists' ability to approve disability placards. Currently, physical therapists are not listed. So that's something that CPTA will be working on over the next year. Couple of things still in the works. We're in year 2 of the 2-year legislative session, so AB 814, animal rehab, is still in play, and we are supportive of the bill and support the efforts of the Animal Physical Therapy Coalition to allow PTs to register with the veterinary board as registered animal physical therapists under certain conditions. So we'll be working on that next year, supporting their efforts. And then the athletic trainer bill may still move forward next year in year 2. And at this point, our official position is opposed unless amended. But we're really just down to a couple of points. So if we could get something worked out with the athletic trainers and the author on just those couple of points, we could remove our opposition, and we would love to do that. So we'll continue working on, see what happens with that. CPTA-sponsored bill, AB 931, the pre-authorization bill, which you supported, and we appreciate that. Made it all the way to the governor's desk and then was vetoed. Unfortunately, we were very disappointed about that. We have no plans on moving anything forward next year. We're going to kind of take a wait-and-see approach and see if there are any other bills that come forward that maybe we can support, and we'll play that part by ear. We also sponsored AB 31, the school credentialing for PTs and OTs. That one was held in appropriations. Again, nothing planned for next year. However, the author, Assemblymember Rubio, did attend our annual conference and spoke there, and really showed support for continuing moving forward in that process. So there may be some forward movement on that, but nothing planned at this point. And that is my report. Are there any questions of the association at this point?
Your town hall meeting, is it virtual or in
It'll be
person?
virtual. Yep.
Any questions?
Thank you, Stacy. Do you have an estimated timeline for the project for the modernization of the Practice Act?
Yeah, it'll take as long as today. No, I'm just kidding. We, as I mentioned, the upcoming year will be more focused on external stakeholders and getting feedback there. We would love to consider moving forward with legislation in the following year, but nothing's said at this point.
Okay,
A lot of it will depend on what we find out over the next year.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Any public comment?
Just for the public, I don't think we took comment on 16A. So any comments on item 16 would be appropriate right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I now have my notes and am prepared to do the executive officer's report. If you'd like to pick up on that, I can be very quick.
All right, moving forward, we're going to go to item number 15, the executive officer's report.
First, I would say thank you for yesterday's strategic planning session. I think it went really well, and we're really excited kind of having a roadmap to work with for the next 5 years, and really want to start working on those goals like preemptively. So But I'll start with some basics for administrative services. First, we still have one board member vacancy to be filled. It is a governor's professional position, and this position is the one that Dr. Daniel Drummer held previously. The governor's office has been very busy working on appointments across the state. We're subscribed to their press releases, and we see a number of appointments being made, it seems like daily, if not weekly. And I would anticipate that we'll receive an appointment for this board and fill that vacancy in the early part of '24, so the new year coming up. And of course, you will be some of the first to know when that happens. So, second, internal staffing of PTBC. You might remember in the last report that we had multiple vacancies across the programs, 3 in applications, 1 in continuing competency, and 1 in the CPS unit. And since that time now, an additional vacancy in the administrative services unit. And that put us right about a 20% vacancy rate, which is kind of unusual for us. But I am happy to announce, without stealing too much thunder, that they have filled the vacancy in the CPS unit, and they'll make those announcements tomorrow during the reports. And they are past interviews and into the selection process for one of the vacancies in the applications unit as well. Having said that, staff have been really great. The effect of those vacancies on workflow at this point are negligible. Performance is still well within acceptable limits. But it's not sustainable, which is still that motivation to get those vacancies filled. But I think once vacancies filled, we can anticipate well-performing 2024, and we'll see even more, efficiencies realized at that point. Licensing services, you might remember we previously reported on an increase in the number of programs, especially in the PT education system. And maybe a word of caution or warning on my point that we can look at an influx of applications received as a result of that. And those numbers have not bared out in Q1. We actually saw a reduction in the number of applications received across the board. It's kind of early to tell at this point if that's anomalous and that's going to balance out Q2, Q3, and still have a net positive fiscal year. We'll just have to kind of look at that. We anticipate that to be the case. But even Q2 numbers at this point look like there still might be a reduction. We still have a few weeks left in this quarter, but just kind of looking at Q2 year to date, there's still kind of a reduction in applications received. So, but again, the process times look good, and so licensing staff, working in spite of all of those vacancies, keeping that performance up, and patiently waiting to be filled. Thank you for that performance. Consumer Protection Services, I don't really have much to highlight for CPS, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like, all is quiet on the Western Front, right? So, having said that, thank you to them as well. But I'll leave some other announcements to be made by the CPS manager, Carol Phelps, tomorrow in the unit reports. Closing, the only thing I would say in addition, for CPTA, thank you for allowing us to attend the conference. October was busy for us, but very fruitful. The booth was a big hit for us. We got a chance to, do outreach for not only your membership and licensees, but students and future applicants, staffing agencies. We met a lot of people. We got a lot of conversation had, and it was a really good trip. And then to turn around again, I'd just like to thank staff that attended that convention with me, the members that turned around and went with me to Florida. December has been kind of a nice kind of quiet calm compared to October. So having said that, we look forward to CPTA's annual meeting in '24 and the webinars. We're happy to attend those as well. And then for 2025, you see that we're working on that calendar. As soon as there's any kind of inkling as to where that location is, it will probably help us anticipate kind of our calendar where we plan on having our meetings located relevancy. So, and that is it. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, comments for Jason? Public comment? Hearing none.
Thank you, Jason. So we will break for lunch. Oh, thank you. God, you're sitting here. Item number 17, I'm hungry. Item number 17, public comment for items not on the agenda. The floor is yours.
And I would say that we probably anticipate moving into closed session for the rest of the afternoon, so we
Correct.
won't be opening the window for items not on the agenda again today. So if you have any, please feel free to come up.
Okay, then we will break for lunch, and we will come, when we come back, we'll come back in for a closed session. What time is it?
12:36.
An hour, you guys? So 1:30, that's 6 minutes. Yeah, fine. 1:30?
Just for members of the public, this concludes the public portion of the meeting for today.